Hey guys, welcome back to Builds by Maz. This is part 3 of my video series showing you how I built this stone fireplace wall. This video will focus on how I turned this old and weathered lumber into a solid wood mantle. I'll show you how I removed the gray coloring and restored the beauty of this wood. And the best part is, there's also a secret drawer behind it. This is a great way to store things you want hidden from view, and I'll give you a full instructional for how to build it. Let's get started. In a previous video, I showed you how to do the framing so it's compatible with the drawer. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out on my channel. But basically, these side pieces will support the drawer, and this opening in the front is what the drawer will slide through. So make sure this box here is smaller than the size of the mantle you'll be using, so it'll be completely covered up. You'll need to use some heavy-duty drawer slides since the wood is pretty heavy. These are rated for up to 200 pounds, and I'll put a link to these and everything else used in this build down below in my video description. We'll install these to the side of the framing here, and that's going to allow the drawer to pull outwards. I lined up a 2x4 along the edge, pressing it all the way to the back wall and marking the front. This way I get an exact measurement, and I can maximize the depth of the drawer. This may seem like thick lumber for a drawer, but I needed to make sure it could support the weight of the mantle. I did the same thing on the right edge, and then test fit these pieces. They'll be sliding in and out like this, but I need to add some margin on the bottom to allow room for the bottom of the drawer, so I'm gonna add a spacer underneath this. I had some 1/2 inch thick cement board laying around, and that ended up being perfect. I lined up the drawer slide with the very front edge of the frame, and then drilled a few pilot holes into the side piece. After drilling 2 screws into it, I could remove this spacer and double check that the slide was level. It looked good, so I added 2 more 1 1/4 inch screws. I then did the same thing for the right slide, attaching it with 4 screws. The front parts of these slides are also removable. When you extend it, you'll see this black tab. If you just push up on it, you can remove the front portion of the rail. These I attached to the 2x4s that I previously cut out. For now, I'm drilling pilot holes and just temporarily securing them with 2 short screws. These will be permanently secured with longer screws later on. This is the time to do a test fit and adjust the rail as needed. With both sides installed, I measured the distance between them. That'll give me an exact measurement for how long I need to make the front and back of the drawer. At this stage, I removed the rails and we'll attach them later. I'm adding a pocket hole going forward facing the front of the mantle so that this side piece can be attached to it. I then assembled the rectangle making up the drawer using 2 3-inch screws for every connection. I did one more test fit, and now I could really see the whole drawer coming together. I gave it all a light sanding just to remove any rough spots. For the bottom, I used 3/8 inch particle board that I already had on hand, but you could also use plywood or MDF. I think 3/8 of an inch is the perfect thickness for this application. I marked off the edges of my drawer frame so that I had an outline to cut out. Using my circular saw, I just trimmed off the bottom panel that I needed. After ensuring it fit properly, I drilled pilot holes all around the border and then secured it with screws. The drawer construction was now finished and the bottom was plenty sturdy. Now with the sanding done, I could permanently reinstall these rails using 4 1 1/4 inch screws. I did one final test fit, and with everything working properly, I could move on to working on the mantle. This was an old piece of wood that I got on Facebook Marketplace for just $25. It's really gray and weathered, but we can restore it. First, I needed to fix this edge. It was cut at an angle and I want it to be squared off. This was a pretty easy fix. Using my framing square, I just lined it up along the edge and drew a line at 90 degrees. I forgot to film it, but I just cut along this line with my circular saw. and now the end was perfectly squared off. Next, I got to work restoring this wood's natural color. I started by removing any loose dust and dirt with a stiff brush. It's important to get the surface as clean as possible. Next, I use this deck and wood cleaner, which you just mix with hot water per the manufacturer's directions. It's pretty simple. Once the powder's dissolved, you can scrub it into the wood with a brush. You want to use a liberal amount and really work it into the wood. Be sure to cover every surface, including the ends. It takes 10 to 15 minutes for this product to work, and you want to keep the wood wet during that whole time, so I gave it all a second pass. After 15 minutes, thoroughly rinse it all off with water. As a reminder, this is how gray the wood was when I originally bought it, and this is how it looked after using this cleaner. I was really impressed with how well it worked, and you could actually mount the mantle just like this if you want a true natural look, but I'm going to do just a couple more things to it. First, I gave the whole thing a very light sanding just to remove any really sharp or rough parts. Then I applied some of this rustic wood effect finish. I simply applied it with a paintbrush, and this old wood soaked up a lot of stain. I know it looks really dark here, but it'll lighten up as it dries. I did one side at a time, and then wiped off any excess. If any stain dries on the surface, it'll look blotchy, so you want to avoid that, and I really recommend doing this in sections. You can see here that the front of the mantle is already looking a little bit lighter as the product dries. And here's what it looks like after a full day. This is a great color that maintains the wood's natural look, without hiding its rustic features like the saw marks. I let it dry for 2 full days before attaching the drawer. This side here is going to be the front of the mantle, so we need to attach the drawer to the back side. I got the drawer in place, and then took a bunch of measurements to make sure it was centered on the mantle. The mantle will be primarily attached using 3 of these heavy-duty lag bolts. I clamped the drawer in place, and then drilled a large pilot hole through the drawer and into the mantle. This is important to make sure you don't have any cracking when you install the lag bolt. These bolts went about 3/4 of the way through the mantle. You want to make sure you have a good connection here. The last thing you want is your mantle falling off and injuring somebody. I drilled an additional pilot hole on either end and added 2 more lag bolts. I only drove them about 90% of the way until they were all in place, and then I fully tightened them. Out of curiosity, I wanted to see how much this whole thing weighed, and it ended up being about 52 pounds. Even though most of that weight comes from the mantle at the front, it's still well below the 200-pound capacity for these drawer slides. And once we had it installed, it felt really secure. This is also when I installed the pocket screws on either side just for added measure. This was probably overkill, but it added an additional connection point. And with that, this mantle was complete. Here's a view of how everything looks through the top. As you move the mantle in and out, you can see this whole drawer slides with it. Because the mantle was slightly bowed in the back, there was a small gap here, but it will be covered up when I install the stacked stone. And if you want to see that install, be sure to subscribe to the channel because that video will be coming out soon. This is what it looks like with the stone fully installed. The mantle fits in seamlessly. Now behind my TV, I added this outlet so I could easily access it. I plugged in a power strip and the TV connection box and fed those down right into the drawer. Now just by opening the drawer, I can plug anything in and also access any of the TV connections. All the HDMI ports are right here. I used this space to hold my gaming consoles, controllers, and games, and there was plenty of room for all of it. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and that maybe it's inspired you to build your own mantle with hidden storage. This was a really fun build, and it's not too difficult. You've just got to plan ahead a little bit. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to check out my channel to see the rest of the videos on this fireplace wall build, and we'll see you next time.